A wealthy woman demanded that a humble elderly man be thrown out of a restaurant because he smelled like animals, making her uncomfortable, but then this happened. Joseph was born in a small rural village, where time seemed to move at a slower pace. He grew up surrounded by fields, wooden fences, and the sounds of animals. His parents were devoted farmers but had little to their name. From a young age, Joseph learned the value of hard work and frugality, helping to support his family in nurturing dreams that reached beyond the horizon of their farm. The simple life taught him to be mindful of every penny, to invest his time and energy into things that truly mattered. "It's not about how much you have, but how you use it," his father used to say, a phrase Joseph would carry with him throughout his life. While still young, Joseph met Nicole, a girl as humble as he was but with unwavering determination. Nicole was his support, his inspiration, and together they dreamed of something greater. With the little they had saved, they decided to move to a nearby city. Joseph started as a kitchen helper in a small restaurant, while Nicole sold homemade cakes and breads that she made with care. Gradually, the couple saved enough money to open their first restaurant, a tiny space that barely accommodated 10 people but overflowed with flavor and care in every dish served. Each day, the restaurant grew a bit more, with Joseph in the kitchen and Nicole serving the customers. They learned about economics and management as they faced daily challenges, from buying ingredients to customer service. The couple knew it wouldn't be easy, but they were determined to build something they could leave behind for Jack, the son they had soon after getting married. Jack grew up amidst pots, utensils, and the constant aroma of fresh food, watching his parents turn a small idea into a thriving business. Over the years, Joseph and Nicole's dedication turned the small restaurant into a successful chain. They opened more establishments, each with the same essence as the first, a welcoming atmosphere and food made with love. Joseph was a shrewd businessman, though he had never attended business school. He knew how to save, where to invest, and always kept his feet on the ground, even when wealth began to knock at his door. Nicole, with her kindness and wisdom, was the balance that kept everything in harmony. However, shortly after the opening of their fifth restaurant, life dealt an unexpected blow. Nicole fell ill rapidly, leaving a vast emptiness in Joseph and Jack's lives. The loss of his wife was a hard blow, and even with all the money and success, Joseph felt poorer than ever. He clung even more to the work and the farm he bought on the outskirts of town, a place that reminded him of his childhood and where he could keep Nicole's love alive through the little things that were part of the routine. Jack, now an adult, took over the management of the restaurants, allowing his father to live the way he always wanted, away from the city lights, without the need to flaunt his wealth. Joseph spent his days caring for the animals, walking the land, and cultivating his memories of Nicole, while Jack invested in the growth of the chain, preserving his parents' legacy. The young man was dedicated but always sought his father's advice in difficult times, knowing that Joseph's experience was an invaluable asset. One day, Jack called his father and asked him to come to the city. "Dad, I need your help with some business matters at the restaurant. Can you come here?" Joseph, though preferring the peace of the farm, would never refuse a request from his son. "Of course, Jack. I'll be there early tomorrow," he replied, with his calm demeanor and always willing to help. Joseph knew that, no matter how much he tried to distance himself from the business world, there would always be something connecting him to the restaurants he and Nicole had worked so hard to build. The next morning, Joseph woke up early, as he always did. The sun was just shyly peeking over the horizon when he prepared to head to the city. He put on his simple clothes, the ones that had always accompanied him, a faded cotton shirt, worn-out trousers, and his leather hat, marked by time and the days spent on the farm. As he looked at the fields around him, he thought of Nicole. "You'd be proud of Jack," he murmured to himself, feeling the morning breeze as he mounted his horse. Arriving in the city, Joseph went straight to the restaurant where he had arranged to meet Jack. Upon entering, he was greeted by the familiar aroma of the dishes that had brought him success. The decor of the place was elegant but welcoming, with touches that reminded him of the first restaurant he and Nicole had set up. Joseph stood for a moment, observing every detail, proud of what he and his family had achieved. Jack was at the back of the dining room, talking to one of the managers, and soon saw his father walking in. "Dad, I'm glad you came," Jack said, embracing Joseph with a smile. "We need to discuss some menu changes and other administrative matters. Your opinion is always very important." "Of course, son. Let's see what needs to be done," Joseph replied, sitting at one of the tables near the window. He took off his hat and looked around, feeling a bit out of place amidst the restaurant's luxury. To him, it was all the result of hard work, not ostentation. As they talked, the restaurant door opened and in walked Sarah, an elegant and imposing woman known for her arrogant demeanor. She was a well-known figure in the city, always dressed in expensive clothes and jewelry that sparkled with every movement. Joseph noticed her entrance but kept his focus on the conversation with Jack, not caring about the people around him. Sarah, however, soon noticed Joseph. Her eyes narrowed at the smell of the country that the elderly man carried with him. She wrinkled her nose, visibly annoyed, and approached a waiter with an authoritative tone. "Who is that man? His smell is unbearable. It's unacceptable for people like him to be allowed in here," Sarah said, unconcerned about being overheard. Jack heard the comment, his face flushed with anger, but Joseph held him back with a calm look. "Let it go, Jack," Joseph whispered, trying to calm his son. But Sarah continued with her disrespectful attitude. She approached the table where Joseph was sitting and looked him up and down with a look of disdain. "With all due respect, this is a fine dining restaurant. People like you should stick to more appropriate places," Sarah said with a sharpness that cut through the air. Jack stood up, ready to react. "This is absurd. This man is my father, and you have no right to speak to him like that," Jack exclaimed, his voice filled with indignation. Joseph, however, remained calm, even in the face of public humiliation. "Jack, please, it's not worth it," Joseph said with a calmness that surprised everyone. He put his hat back on and stood up slowly. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience, miss. I'll leave so that no one feels uncomfortable." Sarah, even more irritated, simply turned her face and sat at another table, feeling victorious. Jack watched his father leave the restaurant with a heavy heart. He knew Joseph deserved respect, not just for being his father, but for everything he had built in life. But Joseph, with his patience and humility, preferred to avoid unnecessary confrontations. He always said that true wealth wasn't in money or possessions, but in maintaining peace even when offended. As soon as Joseph left, Jack went after him. "Dad, you didn't have to leave like that. That woman had no right to treat you like that." "I know, Jack, but arguing with people like her won't change anything. Some people think money makes them better, but we know that's not true. What matters is keeping our dignity," Joseph replied, looking at his son with pride and understanding. Jack, still indignant, decided that he wouldn't let the situation go unanswered, knowing his father didn't deserve such treatment. Jack couldn't forget the humiliating scene he had witnessed at the restaurant. He knew his father didn't care what others thought, but for Jack, it was a matter of respect. Joseph was a man who had built everything with his own hands and had never let arrogance take over, even when success came. Determined to address the situation, Jack decided to seek out Sarah's father, Don John, an influential businessman in the city and owner of a well-known chain of clothing stores. The next morning, Jack donned his best suit and headed to the building where Don John's office was located. It was a tall, elegant building that reflected the power and wealth of the businessman. Jack entered the lobby, feeling a slight discomfort as he noticed the contrast between the luxurious environment and the simplicity with which he and his father had always lived. He approached the reception desk, where a well-dressed secretary with a rehearsed smile attended to him. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you?" the secretary asked, polite but visibly busy with the papers on her desk. "Good morning. I'd like to speak with Don John." "My name is Jack, and I have a personal matter to discuss with him," Jack said, trying to remain calm. The secretary looked him up and down, trying to gauge the seriousness of the request. "Do you have an appointment?" the secretary asked, already prepared to decline the request. "No, but I believe he'll want to hear me out." "It's something important," Jack insisted, feeling the urgency of his mission. The secretary hesitated for a moment but decided to inform Don John, aware that Jack was a well-known businessman in the city, though not part of John's inner circle. After a few minutes of waiting, Jack was led to Don John's office. The room was spacious, decorated with luxurious furniture and paintings that boasted the businessman's success. Don John, a serious-looking man, was seated behind his large dark wooden desk. He raised his eyes as soon as Jack entered, curious about the reason for the unexpected visit. "Jack, it's not every day we have the honor of receiving someone from your family here," Don John said, standing to shake Jack's hand. "How can I help you?" Jack sat down and took a deep breath, organizing his thoughts. "Thank you for seeing me, Don John. I came to talk about your daughter, Sarah. Yesterday, she was at one of our restaurants and, well, the situation was quite unpleasant." Don John frowned, surprised by the direction of the conversation. "Sarah? What did she do this time?" he asked, already imagining that his daughter might have gotten into more trouble. Jack calmly recounted what had happened at the restaurant. "She walked in, and upon seeing my father, Joseph, sitting in the restaurant, she didn't hide her disdain. She made offensive comments about his smell, his clothes, and even demanded that he be thrown out. My father is a humble man, Don John, and he chose to leave rather than cause a scene. But he didn't deserve that treatment. He is the true owner of the restaurant chain, a man who built everything from scratch, along with my mother." Don John listened attentively, and with each word from Jack, his expression grew graver. He knew his daughter had a difficult temperament, but he never imagined she could treat someone like that, especially a man like Joseph. Don John felt ashamed, not only for being Sarah's father but for raising a daughter who seemed to lack an understanding of the true value of things. "I'm very sorry about this, Jack. I don't know where I went wrong with Sarah, but this should not have happened. Joseph is a respectable man, and I deeply regret that he went through this," Don John said, with a sincere tone of remorse. "I will talk to Sarah, and I will make sure she understands the mistake she made. I hope we can rectify this situation." Jack stood up, satisfied with the response but still visibly emotional. "Thank you, Don John. My father didn't ask for any of this, but I couldn't let him be treated that way. He has always taught us to respect others, regardless of who they are or how much money they have." Don John nodded, touched by Jack's words. "You did the right thing. I'll talk to Sarah and make sure she apologizes to Joseph. Your father deserves respect, and I'll do whatever it takes to ensure that happens." Jack shook Don John's hand and left the office with a mix of relief and apprehension. He knew he had done the right thing but hoped that Sarah would truly learn a lesson from this. For Jack, it wasn't just a matter of honor, it was about justice for a man who had dedicated his entire life to honest work and family. A few minutes after Jack left his office, Don John remained seated in his chair, lost in thought. Jack's words echoed in his mind, and the disappointment he felt over Sarah's behavior was immense. Unable to contain his anger, John abruptly stood up, grabbed his coat, and left the room, slamming the door behind him. "I'm not coming back today," he said to the secretary, who looked at him in surprise. "Cancel all my meetings, I have something serious to deal with." John went down to the parking lot and got into his car without saying another word. His mind was boiling with indignation. During the drive home, his only thought was, how could Sarah treat someone with such disdain? This wasn't the upbringing he had given her. John parked the car at the entrance of his house, slammed the door shut, and stormed into the mansion, his footsteps echoing through the hall. "Sarah! Sarah!" he shouted, his voice brimming with rage. Sarah, who had been in her room engrossed in her phone, lazily got up and went downstairs, unconcerned. Upon seeing her father's face contorted with fury, her expression changed immediately. She knew something was terribly wrong. "What's going on, Dad? Why all this anger?" Sarah asked, trying to stay calm but clearly afraid of what was coming. John glared at her, his eyes burning with frustration. "Do you know what you did, Sarah? Do you have any idea of the embarrassment you caused me? Jack came to my office today to tell me how you treated his father at the restaurant. A simple, hard-working man who built everything with his own hands. And you humiliated him because of his clothes, his smell. As if he were inferior to you because of that." Sarah tried to argue, but John continued, not allowing any interruptions. "I didn't raise you to be like this, Sarah. I didn't raise a daughter who thinks money equates to worth. You hide behind my wealth, thinking it gives you the right to step on others. You live off my money, spending it without a care for anything or anyone, money you never had to earn with sweat, never had to save and invest like I've done my whole life." John took a step forward, pointing at Sarah, who was now visibly scared. "Do you think having money makes you better than others? It doesn't, Sarah. What you did yesterday was disrespectful, it was shameful. I've always worked hard to give you the best, but I never taught you to humiliate others. If there's something you should learn about wealth, it's that it doesn't buy character or respect." Sarah lowered her head, feeling the weight of her father's words. She had never seen him so furious and so disappointed in her. "Dad, I didn't know who he was. I thought," she began, her voice trembling, trying to justify herself. "It doesn't matter who he is." John interrupted, raising his voice again. "It doesn't matter if he's a millionaire or a simple farmer. What matters is respect. And that you didn't show. You're going to apologize to him, Sarah, and not tomorrow, not later. Now. We're going to Joseph's farm, and you're going to apologize. And if you don't want to, you can forget about any of my money for the rest of your life. I'm fed up with supporting your arrogant behavior." Sarah knew her father was serious. She swallowed hard and nodded, not daring to argue. John didn't wait for a more elaborate response. He grabbed the car keys and left, with Sarah following closely behind. During the drive to Joseph's farm, the silence in the car was heavy, laden with tension and regret. When they arrived at the farm, John got out of the car and looked around. The simple landscape and Joseph's wooden house were the opposite of his own life of luxury, but here he saw something money couldn't buy, the peace of someone who lives according to their own values. Joseph was near the barn, tending to the animals, when he saw the car stop. He took off his hat and approached, surprised by the visit. "John, what brings you here?" Joseph asked, curious and polite as always. John sighed, feeling the weight of shame on his shoulders. "Joseph, I heard about what happened at the restaurant, and I want to apologize. My daughter, Sarah, has something to say." Sarah got out of the car, visibly uncomfortable. She looked at Joseph, a simple and kind man who now seemed even greater in her eyes, not because of his wealth but because of his dignity. With a low and trembling voice, she began. "Mr. Joseph, I want to apologize for what I did. I was arrogant, and I treated you in a way that no one deserves to be treated. I know I was wrong, and I am very sorry for being so unfair." Joseph looked at her with a gentle smile and replied calmly, "We all make mistakes, Sarah. What's important is to learn from them. I hold no grudges, it's in the past." He extended his hand, and Sarah shook it, feeling a relief she hadn't felt in a long time. Joseph then turned to John, who watched the scene with a mix of pride and emotion. "Thank you, Joseph, for being a better man than many of us," John said sincerely. Joseph merely nodded, showing that for him, true wealth lay in humility and respect. After dawn, John and Sarah bid farewell to Joseph, they left the farm, leaving behind the emotional weight of that meeting. Joseph watched the car disappear down the dirt road, and for a moment, felt at peace. He knew that Sarah still had a long way to go in understanding the true value of things, but that apology was a start. Later, While tending to the animals in the barn, Joseph picked up his cell phone and decided to call Jack. The son's voice answered on the other end, sounding cheerful but with a hint of anxiety. "Dad, is everything okay?" Jack asked. "Everything is fine, my son. They came here, and Sarah apologized." John was also very remorseful, Joseph said in a calm but firm tone. "I know you went to talk to him. You didn't have to do that, Jack. But I appreciate you always standing by my side." Jack sighed on the other end of the line, feeling the relief and emotion in his father's voice. "Dad, you've always taught me to stand up for what's right. I couldn't let this go." "You deserve respect, and you'll always have mine," Jack said, his voice choked with emotion. Joseph smiled, looking at the sky over the farm. "You make me very proud, Jack. More than any money or success we've achieved together, knowing that you have your heart in the right place is my greatest wealth." With those words, Joseph felt that his journey, full of ups and downs, had been more than worthwhile. He didn't need grand gestures to demonstrate his strength or to flaunt the wealth he built with Nicole. All he needed was there, in the respect earned, in the simplicity of life, and in the unwavering love of his family. Joseph hung up the phone, knowing that the legacy he and Nicole left behind was much more than a chain of restaurants. It was the assurance that with humility, hard work, and respect, any challenge could be overcome. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. See you in the next story.